Hey everybody, it's the Bald Bearded Bicyclist, and today we are back with the Buffalo Bicycling Club Sunday Series races, and this is the Shero Road course. This one today we started out with a neutral lap that the skies opened up and it was a crazy downpour, so we were soaked. People were having trouble stopping with rim brakes, so we kind of made a little gentleman's agreement that after this one steep downhill that kind of starts out the course, we would take it easy and not attack through that corner. And if we were all together before it, we would kind of let it come back together. So that plays in here, but luckily it did stop raining during our first race lap. This is the B group, so we were doing 3 race laps. This picks up, the lap counter is wrong, just ignore that on this video, but we just finished our first race lap, so we've got 2 laps to go and heading into that downhill section here. You can see the wind in the top right corner, those little blue arrows. It's going to be right to left along the finish straight. And there's a couple other straights where it comes into play, but really I wasn't focused on it too much until the finish. I am going to skip around a little bit on this one because there's really just a couple of points of interest, but I think the wet was the biggest factor of the day, and then the wind was kind of the second. But we've got a smaller B group. We were actually going to start with the A's, but after the first time we took this corner, Drew, who's on the front right now, wasn't able to stop at all with his rim brakes, and he flew right through the turn. And so we decided, look, we're not going to push it to keep with the A's. We'll just ride our race and take it a little bit more conservatively. We're still learning, but I think he misses it again in this turn. Yeah, he just couldn't make the turn, so he goes straight. And we take it easy and just let him catch back on and then get back to it. Luckily, going into the last lap, he was able to make the turn, so it wasn't a factor there. But I will skip ahead of it. So looking at this now, I'm realizing that maybe I did a little bit too much on the front because Tom in the Chicluna kit in front of me, only now he comes in front, I think just because he was trying to be nice and help me out, but I was on the front from that downhill turn to here. I wasn't doing crazy watts, but I was probably keeping it high tempo to threshold, and then on the inclines I was punching up those a little bit. Nothing crazy, but it was wearing me down, and I think the only other person that really put in some good pulls, Ray was taking some turns, but Drew always likes to pull a lot, and I realized that with him being a smaller body than myself, and I would usually end up being second wheel to him, I wasn't getting a huge draft, and so it would often be that I was just using energy even being behind him, and he likes to have take really long pulls, so they'd wear me down, and then I would obviously pull through when he would pull off, and spend some time all the way on the front. So I think I just do better in a bigger group where I can really find a draft to hang out in, and take the time to rest, and then hopefully I can get to the point where I can move up a little bit better when I want to either do for moves or near the end of the race, but know when it's okay to chill and hang out, and when I need to move forward, but just using a little bit too much energy, because I think pretty soon here Tom flicks me through, and so I take the front again. So I never really rotate all the way back, this lap at least. I think maybe the last lap I got a little better with that, and realized I needed to stop pulling so much. But yeah, see, Tom flicks me through, and I take the front. So, it's a small group, and I wanted to keep our speed up. I wasn't just going to hang out this whole race. So, but got to get a little better at balancing the work. So this is after the next turn, and this is the next place where I get off the front, and so I've been pulling for about 3 minutes. We're heading up a good little hill, and I'm thankful to be off the front, and we start rotating a little bit better here, but people are taking much shorter pulls. Drew and I tend to be on the front just a little bit too long, and I gotta stop doing that. But as we come up this hill, we actually see one of the Canberra riders from the A group has fallen back from the A group. So I think when Drew takes the front, he kind of pushes to catch up to him, and then he joins our group, which is great, because it just gives us, another body, and he animates things a little bit. He gets in rotation, and that takes nice pulls, and you'll see he really kind of helps later to work in a chase group, which is great. And I'm again debating going back to A as these B races. I learned a ton in this one specifically because a couple things happened we'll talk about in a bit, but I think it does end up becoming a little bit repetitive, this small group, and just knowing these riders and how things are going to play out. And a lot of it comes down to just fitness levels, because again, there's not a ton of opportunity to really get in a draft and then throw in attacks. If we had a bigger group, I think I'd still be able to learn a lot in B, but I think I'm getting to the point where I just got to push myself, get an A, and even if I just play around the first couple laps and then I can't hang on, I'll at least get some good experience there. But little downhill section here. Things are luckily starting to dry out at this point, so it's no longer a major concern for the guys. Oh, right here I realized some sweat got in my eye and I literally couldn't see. So for like the past minute I was like trying to blink it out and I couldn't, so I just pulled off and was rubbing my eye and trying to be able to see before this turn, because it was making me a little nervous that I could not see out of my left eye. But yeah, so I had to use a little bit of a match just to make sure I got back on the draft after I figured out my vision situation. And then this is the last straight where this whole section is, none of it's super steep, but it is just like a gradual incline the whole way. And after a while, it just can feel like a grind. And with it being, we're already a couple laps in, we're going to be, when we cross the finish line, we'll be on our last lap. But doing the neutral, and then this has been our second race lap, so the little hills are starting to sting a little bit. and it's just a long gradual climb. But we are rotating better, and the sun's coming out a little bit, so I know that was making me feel a little bit more energized. We were soaked. Even after the neutral lap, I had to run to my car and change gloves because I was wearing full finger gloves, which were absolutely soaked, and I couldn't even feel the controls. I had to wring them out and switch to other gloves so I could be a little bit safer. Jumping ahead a little bit, we've actually been rotating really nicely, taking shorter poles, and kind of riding like it's a paceline group ride with a small group. It's just good to keep the pace up, and we're getting some good practice, as if this were almost a little breakaway. But now we're on the downhill section, and it's last lap. I'm kind of curious whether Drew will be able to stop. So I don't know if I really want to get in front of him and him not be able to stop, or I kind of think, if I'm on the inside, then I should be good either way, because if he can't slow down, he'll end up just going straight again, like the last lap. But so I finally let myself pick up a little speed, which I hadn't on the last couple laps. But he makes the turn, and we're good. You can see the other guys took it pretty cautiously, so there was a pretty big gap there. But we just again slowed it down and let everybody get back together, and we are getting ready for the last lap here. So I've been pulling for a bit, but really slowly, and I was cautious of it being the last lap. I didn't really want to use much energy, so I think I was keeping it under 200 watts, and I was surprised that no one had come around me before this. But Scott decides to pick it up and jumps in front of me, and this whole section here is just a little bit rolling, so we're going 33, but we're really putting in much effort. You're just kind of going up and down those rollers. So he takes the front and just keeps the pace a little bit higher than what I was keeping it at. So Scott's actually been pulling for quite a bit here, and we're going up an incline, and Drew puts in a little dig here, so I decide I need to grab onto his wheel, because I know that Drew is probably the strongest rider. I'm definitely the strongest rider in the Bs. But I'm not even quite on his wheel. And again, I was realizing, with Scott on the front there, I was still second wheel, so I wasn't getting a ton of draft. I wasn't working that hard, but I'm just constantly keeping myself maybe a little bit too close to the front and using too much energy. And now I'm not even drafting him, so I'm putting in probably more work than him because he's lighter than me, and we're going uphill. But you can see Tom was trying to get on my wheel, so behind me he was right there for a while, and then I think kind of just started to give up there as I'm now finally on Drew's wheel a little bit. But these rollers, they keeps going uphill, and he keeps putting in little digs on each one, trying to get the most benefit out of his draft that I can, but I'm starting to hurt. The constant effort's kind of getting to me. But we've got a gap, and if I was feeling better, I would have, yelled out to him. I remember looking back and seeing the gap. He sees it here. But I didn't want him to pick up the pace, knowing that I was already hurting. I wanted to just kind of keep it a consistent gap if we could. But I'm already kind of questioning how long I can stay with him. But that is my goal here, is just try to see if I can stick with him, and if we can get in a little two-man breakaway. But he's continuing to push it and look back. I do not want to be over 300 watts right now, and every time I dip under 300 is when I've got little gaps opening between him and I. Got our turn coming up. I know this is a little punchy hill too. I gapped off him, so when he puts in another little dig, I'm struggling to catch back up to him. 500 watts, almost 600 watts. I don't want to be there. We still got a gap. So for whatever reason in my mind, I thought, well, maybe I'll take the front for a second, because I feel bad that Drew has been pulling, but he doesn't mind. I talked to him afterwards. But even me just spiking up to try to take the front for a second was a bad idea, because now I'm really starting to feel it. And so I just decide, you know what, I will completely destroy myself if I try to stay at that pace. In hindsight, maybe I could have stuck with him, because it's still a 2% grade, but it wasn't what we were just going up. Maybe a little bit longer I could have hung on until there's a small downhill section. You can kind of see in the distance the crest of a hill there. So if I made it to there, maybe I would have had a chance to recover and could have stuck with him, but kind of decided it'd be better for me to fall back. But right now I'm kind of stuck in no man's land. I'm still doing 300 watts, which I really shouldn't have. I should have, when I decided that I was going to fall back, I should have just soft pedaled, let the guys behind me catch, and then jump on them. And I believe I do that shortly. I start just going a little bit easier so that they can catch me quicker, and I can join in with them. I'm going under 200 watts now, so I kind of realized I was pushing a little bit too hard. But I still definitely had a gap. I guess had I tried to settle in threshold, maybe I could have even stayed away. But then you just got two separate breakaways, and that's not very fun. I wanted to learn something about being in a chase group, because again, that's what these Sunday Series races are all about. So Scott and Ray have been working together. He tells me to jump on, that we'll work together. I think Tom had been dropped, but he claws his way back and gets back on us. But so I'm excited to work with these guys and be able to draft a little bit, and happy to take my pulls when it comes to it. But I'm not I'd rather do short bursts and recover than do long sustained efforts. So happy to be in a group. Probably could have taken that turn a little bit better and not spiked so much, but So you can see in the back camera, Tom's coming up on us pretty quick, and Scott's putting in good effort in front too. But now we start rotating, and Tom's going to grab on and start rotating with us as well. So this was a really good lesson for me. If you've seen my other videos, I was in a very, very short-lived break in the Grand Island race, and I've actually yet to post it, but the club race of Marilla, not the Tour of Buffalo one, I was in a little breakaway. But this was really helpful for me to work on smooth power and easing off when you pull off. And this first couple of turns I might have surged a little bit too much, but I started to find a little bit more fluid way to do it. So Scott was really helpful, and he was just saying, when you pull over, just you gotta ease off. And so I'm really, this is the reason why B can be helpful, because I probably would not be able to do this with anybody in A group. And it's definitely something you got to feel out and practice. So we're starting to get pretty fluid on the poles. I'm trying to do VO2 efforts, and as I pass, I pull over, and then I try to drop back down to right now I'm close to threshold, but more high tempo. And then once I'm actually all the way on the back, then I can settle in for a little bit. But there's a little spike there. I mean, we're going up a 5% grade now, so being on the back isn't helping me too much as far as being in the draft. I'm still working VO2, but still more helpful than if I was on the front. And now that it's calmed down, I can draft a little bit. But again, this final stretch is really uphill the whole way. And it starts to feel really long as you get further into it. But our pulls were starting to get a little weaker. Our speed overall was slowing down. And I think we were just kind of realizing, well, Drew's probably gone. And technically this race comes down to Ray and I, because these other two guys are really just mentoring our group and are not actually a part of the Bs. They still play into the race, obviously, because they can help people by, obviously forming this chase group. And, if we were really working a bit harder, maybe we could have closed that gap to Drew if we'd gotten together sooner. But at this point, we're on the final stretch, and he's got a really good gap. So I'm still putting in a decent amount of work on my pulls and just trying to work on being fluid. Wind is right to left, so that's why we're pulling off to keep the people pulling through on the leeward side, which is the sheltered side, basically. But I'm trying to, getting a little bit better with that timing, getting back onto the side that's moving forward and pulling through, not spiking too much, just more of a smooth acceleration. You can see we're still only going 16 miles per hour because it's a 2% grade, so that probably help Drew stay away a little bit too, because the speed differential is just not that much. If it were flat or downhill, our group would have a good advantage to being able to get him, because we'd just be able to pick up a little bit more speed. So I'm starting to be a little bit more cautious with my poles, knowing again that we are getting close to the end, and I'm going to have to sprint. So I want to position myself nicely. So Scott and Tom are just kind of saying, he's not going to get in the way during the sprint. He's going to stop pulling just because he's not really a part of this race.
I was sitting in his craft. I couldn't even hold it. Yeah. I think I was doing close to 300 on his wheel.
I'm also, I know that I have to get over to the yellow line, because I do not want to be taking the wind when it comes down to a sprint. But right now, the other guys were there, and I should be getting over right now that it's clear. But I do eventually make it over there. So I'm trying not to pull too hard, knowing that I'm comfortable being on the front right now, as long as I'm not putting in too much work. So I'm under 200, and I'm just kind of waiting to get a little bit closer. I did leave that left side open way too long. Now I finally moved over, which is good. Don't love having to do it with those cars flying by, but now I'm protecting that side. So if somebody were to start sprinting, they'd have to go on the right side, which would be taking a lot more wind, and I would basically be sheltered by them if I were to then sprint. So I'm in pretty good position here. And even though Tom is not actually in my field, he teaches me a good lesson here, because I'm looking over my right shoulder to keep an eye on Ray to see if he is going to sprint me, and I'm trying to hold that yellow line. But I think because I lost sight of him, I didn't know where Ray was. I thought he was going to come around the left, but that actually made me swerve right. Tom launches the sprint. I follow, and it was all too easy for him to get around me on the sheltered side. So gotta protect your positioning there at all times. But super fun. Took second with Tom not technically counting there, and lesson learned. We've got the Hamburg weekend coming up, so we'll have another crit at ECC and then the Hamburg road race, so that should be a lot of fun. Like and subscribe, and you'll get notifications when those videos are released. Thanks a lot. See you in the next one.